Okay, so Flex Dashboard is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It is a dashboard that's a web application where you're sort of summarizing data visuals and data summaries to be able to share with other people. It could be sharing in your lab, sharing with stakeholders, and so on. And I think it's fitting that it says Flex Dashboard because I think it's a pretty big flex when you share this link with somebody. They're like automatically impressed saying it with experience, and not because my dashboard is cool, just because they're like, it's a cool way to share data. So here's a few examples. This is a coronavirus dashboard, very relevant. And I have the links here if you wanted to visit them, but it's basically you have some storyboard type of formatting on the top where it has summary information and then some more tabs within it so you can check out each one. Here's another example of a Pokemon dashboard. So here you have a chart that has the species count by the main type, the types of tree map, and the different types of Pokemons, as well as each of their like characteristics just by scrolling over it. This is an example from a student who's in the capstone project who's using it for their dissertation work. So you can even use it to summarize data from over time with pre-post. So you have different pages at the top, different tabs within each page, and then even distributing it by sample characteristics as well, which is pretty cool, I think. This is my dashboard from my final project in this course last year. So I was doing a dashboard on child abuse prevalence in the state of Oregon from a pilot study. So I have a description here about what the data is, and then a background page and some other pages that describe the actual data, which I can show you later on as we move through this. So before we get started, I want to point out that the ultimate source for your Flex dashboard is going to be the RStudio page, basically, for Flex dashboard. So everything that we're going to cover in this lecture today is going to be on that page. You can, of course, revisit this lecture, but you can also revisit this link that'll just have the code for you to pretty much copy and paste. So you have the layouts and things like that. So after many, many attempts at trying to create Flex dashboards and then publishing them and failing miserably, I have decided that the first place to start is with a workflow. So being very organized about where you start and then pushing it to GitHub and publishing it before you actually start, putting in all of your energy into it. So we want to make sure that you have the option to publish in the future, whether you want to at this point or not. So you're going to create a new project, create a new R Markdown template, knit it right away, create a GitHub repo, and then you're going to link your local and remote. So we're going to do this all together. So go ahead and set yourselves up by opening RStudio, opening GitKraken, and opening up your GitHub page. Great. So first things first, we're going to start by creating a new project. So go ahead and go to File, New Project. We're going to do it from a new directory, a new project. And I'm just going to do it on my desktop, but you can go ahead and save it wherever you typically do it. Mine's just going to be DD for dashboard demo. And I'm going to check this box that says create a Git repository. And I'm going to open it in a new session, but you don't have to, and create project. So okay, so now once you have your new project open in your console, and you're only going to do this one time, you're going to install the package Flex Dashboard. So go ahead and do that. And I'm not going to do it because I already have it installed, but it should take about 5 seconds or so. And once that's installed, you'll go to File, New File, and you'll open up R Markdown. And once you have this, you're going to do it from template. And since you installed the Flex Dashboard package, you should have Flex Dashboard show up right here. Does anyone not have that show up? Great. So I'm going to press OK. And now I have this R markdown that's set up for the Flex dashboard pretty much. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you made it this far. Okay. For those of you that didn't make it, are you having trouble or you just need a little bit more time? I'm gonna go with time. So what you're gonna do here, we're gonna change the name, and I will name it demo dash. And then you're just gonna knit it right away. And when it asks you to save it, I'm gonna save it as index.rmd, and I recommend that you also save it as index.rmd. Go ahead and save, and it should knit, and we'll take a look at what that looks like. Cool. So we have this template dashboard here that matches up. So I have this title, demo dash, that also shows up right here, and then chart A, chart B, chart C. So now that we have this, we are going to create our GitHub repository so that we can link this. So go ahead and open up your GitHub page. I am going to click on this plus button on the right and create a new repository. And I'm going to name it the same thing as my project. So my project was called DD, so I'm going to name my repository DD. I'm going to skip over all this other stuff, and I'm just going to press create repository. So now once you're here, you're going to press this little clipboard button so that it copies this link for you. Or you can, of course, just copy and do it yourself. And then I'm going to open Git Kraken, and I'm going to go to File, Open Repo. So since we created our project folder already, I'm going to go to Open a Repository, and I'm going to find the folder that has my project, so DD. Select the folder, and initialize. And go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you've made it here. Or if you have questions, please feel free. Give it 5 more seconds. Okay. So now that you've opened up your local repository here. So now I have to add my remote repository. So on the left-hand side, there's a remote button. I'm going to press plus. I'm going to click on URL since that's what we copied from our GitHub repo. I'm going to name it the same thing as all of my repos have been named so far, DD. And I'm going to paste the URL that I copied from GitHub. And go ahead and press add remote. And once I do that, I can see that I have these 4 files, the index.rmd file and these other files that need to be pushed. So I'm going to stage all of those changes. I'm going to call it initial commit, commit the changes, and push them. And I'm going to confirm that it should be pushed to the master branch. Okay, so push successfully. Once it does that, if I go back to my GitHub repository, I'll just click on this guy. So I'm at the repo, and I can see that all of my index.rmd and each of the other files can push to GitHub. So once you're here, give me a thumbs up again. And if you want me to repeat anything, I'm happy to. If you need a little bit more time, give me a thumbs up. All right, we'll wait a little bit. Okay, so on your GitHub repo page, you're going to go to settings. And you're going to scroll on this, just the front page, scroll all the way down where it says GitHub pages. And right now, the default is probably currently disabled. So we're just going to say, change this to the master. And this should be root, and go ahead and save. And then your settings page is going to refresh when you do that. So then you'll scroll all the way back down again. And now you have a link. So this link is basically going to pull the files from this root directory, and it's going to publish them into a GitHub page. So you're going to copy this link, go back up. You can go back to your repo. So just clicking on the repo name will send you back there. And now on this right-hand side, I'm going to paste in my website link. I'm going to get rid of that period I accidentally copied and save the changes. And now when I click on this link, there's my dashboard. How cool is that? Pretty cool. Answer my own question, it's fine. So give me a thumbs up once you're here.
Just one other really minor thing here. Akila mentioned that you should have your R Markdown file be called index.rmd, and that's because it knits to index.html, and that's what gets published. So whatever you call index.html, so you can do this with anything, actually. It doesn't have to be a Flex dashboard. Any R Markdown file you have, period, you can rename it index.html in a GitHub repo and set it to publish with GitHub pages, and you'll get a link that publishes that R Markdown file.
Yes, thank you. Super important. Okay, so future reference. I'm only mentioning this because I'm very proud of it. I have GIFs in the slides that are posted that will just go through each of the steps that we went through in case you need them. But now that we've published our dashboard, let's actually play around with the features of it. So starting with the YAML, which is the top part right here, we can, if you want to make it so that your audience is able to share this dashboard on any type of social media, all you got to do is put in social::menu, and then they'll have the option to share this dashboard to Twitter, Facebook, Google, and so on. You can also add in your source code. So right here, it'll show up with like this GitHub button, and you can put in whatever link you want. ideally it would be the link to your GitHub page that has the code for this dashboard. And that way they can go in there and they can actually see how you visualize your data, what packages you used, and all sorts of things, so that it's reproducible that way. Now, if you wanted to add a new page, right now you only have one page as default. So if you wanted to add a new page, you would use level 1 R markdown header, which is just basically equal signs. You can name it page 1 and page 2, or you can try to be hip and relevant and name it something else. So I named page 1 Weird Flex, page 2 But Okay, and now we have 2 pages with those names right there. Important thing here, this will come up a couple of times and you'll probably find out with practice, but spacing is a little bit weird with this markdown file. So if you have an extra space after these equal signs, it might not work well for you. So just double check that you don't have any extra spaces in random places. So just with that, without going through anything else, I would love if you all could just play around. So I'll give you 5 minutes. Try to change the name of each square. So instead of chart A, chart B, change it to whatever you want. Try adding a different plot or changing the number of squares or the size. And here's just a sample plot from the empty cars data set, just in case you don't want to think about how to use ggplot at this point. But I will give you until 10:37, let's say, and try to customize your dashboard. All right, so let's come back. It's about 10:37. Is there anything tricky that anyone would like to share, or anything cool, maybe, or anything at all about their playtime?
I'll share something. So this is later, I think it's not the next lecture, but the one after that, we'll talk about tables and things. One of the things we'll talk about is using interactive tables. And part of what's nice about dashboards is you can use things like interactive tables and they just work because it's all HTML based anyway. So like there's a package called Reactable. You can call Reactable on empty cars and you get to this nice little interactive table where you can sort the columns and things like that. So kind of like Akila said at the start, dashboards are a flex, and it's like it's almost like cheating how simple they are. like the social menu that she showed. It's so neat and so simple, and so I think they're really fun. That's all.
Yes, definitely. Thanks for sharing that, Daniel. We're going to do that together actually in a little bit, so that'll be cool.
Sorry.
Does anyone else? Does anyone else want to share?
My GitKraken froze during that, and so I spent the 5 minutes trying to get caught up, but your GIFs were super helpful. So I was able to re-follow along. So thank you.
Jeanette, I see you. You're trying to make me feel good, and it's working. I'm glad it works. Anyone else want to share? All right, let's keep going. So I'm guessing this all worked for all of you and you're all able to do it. Great, because I'm just gonna guess. But let's say that you wanted to add some text. So the cool part about this being in R Markdown format is basically that you can just modify it like you would any R Markdown. So here I'm specifying page 1. And notice I did it with 1 hashtag instead of the equal signs this time, which I think you can also do it that way, but sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work for me. But yes, so after I specified my page, I'm just saying, check out this plot I made. You can, of course, use any kind of description, and then I have the 3 hashtags for each of the squares within that column. Now, if I wanted to create more columns, you'll see that in the default, let's see, the default has 2 columns. So this one has 1 chart in column A and chart B and C in column 2. But if I wanted more columns, I would just do column and then the level 2 markdown header, which is just dashes. And then again, to pay attention here is making sure that there's no extra space after these dashes. And if I wanted to specify the width of the columns, I would just, in the brackets, I would put data width and then whatever the size I wanted. So if I For example, if I have two columns and there's one column that I very specifically wanted it to be like a specific width because of the plot that I want to show, then I can specify this, and then in my YAML, I can say vertical layout : fill. So that way, that one column will be specified, and then the other column will basically fill out the page for me. So I don't have to sort of like do the math of how big should each column be. So, and after that, within each column, if you wanted to specify a new square, it would be same as before. You would have your 3 hashtags and then the name of whatever you wanted that square to be. If you wanted rows, then you would just change your orientation in your YAML to orientation as rows. So the default is columns. So if you don't specify an orientation, it'll just show up in columns. But if you wanted to specify, you can, of course. But what if you wanted to do what I did and you were like, okay, I want one page with rows and I want the other pages with columns? What you would do is don't specify an orientation. I included vertical layout and horizontal layout to both be fill, so that regardless of whatever that page is, I want the information to fill out the page. And then when I specify the page here where I have page 1, I would then specify the data orientation there. So page 1 has the orientation rows, and then page 2 has the default columns. I didn't specify anything. And again, just to note that there's no space around the equal signs or anything like that. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And same thing, rows and columns, you would format each of them the same way. So a new row would be row with the level 2 headers, and then you can change the width, the height actually, because rows goes this way, and specify the height, and then you can create a new square within each row with the 3 hashtags. Now, what if you want a sidebar that's just a static sidebar that'll show up for one page or all of the pages? A sidebar can be helpful if you have, like, if you want to describe your data, for example, so that the viewer always remembers that the visualizations are from synthesized data. Like for this example, where I didn't want anyone to make conclusions from the plots I was creating. You can also maybe want external links for other resources for your audience. You can have a sidebar. So you would basically do it the same way as you would create a new page. You would create sidebar title, and then your in brackets dot sidebar with the level 1 header, which is just all equal signs. And then in your sidebar, you can use regular R markdown syntax. So that would be the asterisks for italics or bold. You can insert links with the brackets and typing in whatever text and then inserting your link there. It's actually, I think the sidebar is pretty cool. If you wanted it on all pages, so that if you wanted this to show up on background and each of these other tabs, you would have the equal signs. And if you only wanted it on one page, you would have the level 2 header, which is just the dashes. Any questions so far?
When you put those headers in, does it matter how many dashes or equal signs you put?
Such a good question. I think there's a minimum of 5. I don't think there's a maximum. What do you know about it, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the minimum is, but I think there's not a maximum. So you just go until you have a line of them, and then you're like, okay, good, and then move on.
That's what I do too. As you can see, they're not all the same size. So just, whatever my finger feels like. So, okay, so at this point we have columns and we have rows and we have a sidebar. But if you wanted to organize it even more, you can, within each column, instead of having the squares stack on top of each other, or stack next to each other, which is a default, you can organize them by tabs. So that way your plots can sort of be bigger and they're not squished together. You would just use tab set. So same thing as when you included a sidebar, you would in brackets do dot tab set. So basically that's saying when you specify your squares, put them in tabs instead of stacking them next to each other. And then I feel like I'm just like, it's okay. So now that you have tabs, you can still specify the size of the column, but if you want to do tabs and the column, an important thing to remember, so anytime you have multiple arguments within those brackets, you want to make sure that there is a space between them, but no comma. And if you have a comma, you'll find it doesn't work. Okay, so this is basically dashboards. Like this is all of it, which is pretty, like, for how cool it is, it's pretty simple, I think. And now we're gonna get into like the extras, I would say, which like really make your dashboard pop. And this is the point during the course last year where I was just super overwhelmed and was like not wanting to put my toes into these extras because they're extra. So what we're gonna do is do it together. So I'm gonna open up my dashboard that I created with you all. And this is exactly what Daniel was talking about. So Reactable and Plotly, I won't go into too much because you will talk about it later, but I just want to show you how cool it is. So here for my chart A, I created this plot. I'm just going to assign it to an object called plot1. And then typically I would just need to do Plotly. So that's the package. Yeah, make sure that you have that installed, by the way, if you're going to do this with me. ggplotly, and then I would just run it on the object name. But since I have more than one page in my dashboard, I need to make it a Shiny application. And a Shiny application is just basically a package in R, very similar to Flex Dashboard, that allows you to make interactive web pages, basically. So first thing I'm going to do, since I have multiple dashboards, is I'm going to add to my YAML after my title and before output, I'm going to write runtime : Shiny. So this will basically say that look out for interactive pieces basically in each of your pages. And now, same thing, and since I'm using Shiny, I'm going to do render in front of Plotly. And I'm gonna do plot1. And I have a feeling I need to do library. That, and let's knit it and see what that looks like. No.
I think you just load Plotly also.
Okay, thank you. Oh, because I did not namespace it, so that makes sense. What's going on? Run document. Okay, so it looks exactly the same until I scroll over it, and now I can just scroll over each of the points and see the exact data value, which is so useful and pretty awesome. And you can download it immediately as a PNG if you wanted, or many of these other things. Zoom in if you wanted, zoom out. And for how easy this is, like, I was very intimidated by Shiny because it sounds very cool, I guess. So it's supposed to be difficult. But let's try it with a reactable table. So for chart C, I will do library reactable. And then I will just run this on an entire data set. So I'm just going to do empty cars. And let's just run it so you can see. Okay, so now in my chart C area, I can scroll through all of these. I can sort each of the columns by highest to lowest or whatever, and I can, and I'm not doing it at this point, but I'm sure you'll go over in later time. You can specify a reactable table so that you can search for certain values, you can filter it out by certain values, and so on. So now you have an interactive page ready to go. Does anyone have any questions? Give me a thumbs up if you were able to do this, at least one of them. Nice. Okay. So at this point, you have interactivity, but you want to make it even cooler. So you want to add, so my solution to making it cooler would be icons. So what I recommend is font awesome icons. So in the lecture slide, you can just click on font awesome icons. It'll take you to this website, Font Awesome. And once it loads, you have a variety of icons that are just for free, and there's some too that are, you know, if you get the pro version. But I'll go to code, and I happen to like this icon called Code Branch. And I want to use this icon as my like little icon that shows up for the page name. So if I look here, I have some HTML code, and this basically tells you the name of the icon that you want. So it's essentially the name code-branch, and it has this prefix FA for font awesome. So what all I need to do if I wanted to include this would be go to my page specification. So, oh, I actually didn't even name this anything. Let's name this page 1. Okay, so in my page specification, I would use the curly brackets, data icon equals, and then in quotes, FA for font awesome dash code branch, which is just the name of the icon that I like. I'm just gonna do that. And then if I run this, here where it says page 1, I have this code branch icon that I wanted to use, which is great. On the slides, I also included a link to a website called Ionicons. Both of these are included on the RStudio web page, Flex Dashboard tutorial page as well. But the only difference between using Ionicons and Font Awesome icons is this prefix right here. So you would similarly use the name of the icon, and then the prefix would be ion for Ionicons. And then you can have icons from either one. So if you wanted, you can also have a logo, which is very similar. It can be a little bit tricky actually, so I shouldn't say so simple, but the way you specify it in your R Markdown would be logo : and then the name of the PNG file that's saved in your project folder. So you can have the PNG file saved in your project folder. You can also have the source of it, so you can link it to the location, but I find this to be a little bit easier. The tricky part is that in your default theme that shows up with Flex Dashboard, the header is only 48 pixels high. So you need to make sure that the PNG file is also about 48 pixels, if not smaller than that. Otherwise, it won't make any sense. It will just be very large. So one of the last things that we're going to go over is storyboards. So far, we've gone over columns and rows as the formatting, and then going to tabs within each of those. But another option for your layout would be a storyboard format, which is essentially this comic book type of structure where you can scroll through on the top, for looking through each of the storyboard frames. And then on the bottom, you can include an HTML widget like they have here, or you can include a plot that you create and some description. So you can have your entire dashboard can be a storyboard, like that very first coronavirus example that we saw, which is just storyboard on the top of frames of the data, and then and below you have more plots, but you don't have any other pages. If that's what you wanted to do, you would just say storyboard:true in your YAML, and that's about it. But if you wanted one page to be a storyboard and you wanted all your other pages, so this is what it would look like, by the way. If you wanted one page to be a storyboard and your other pages to be rows and columns like we've done previously, you would just create a new page like we've been doing. So level 1 headers with the equal signs, and then in brackets, you would have storyboard. So here I have my sidebar that I've included on every page, and then I have the storyboard that I can scroll through. And then, yep. And in each of these frames, you would specify, you can include R code basically to include whatever you want in those frames. And you can have commentary as well, which I unfortunately didn't include on the slide, but you can find it on the Flex dashboard tutorial page. And the last thing is the themes. So basically you can, the theme is essentially like everything that determines what your dashboard looks like, including the color and the fonts and that sort of thing. So the default is this, but if you go to this Flex dashboard tutorial page, we'll just find it. We can go to themes right here, and then you have this entire list of themes. So just by changing your YAML, let's see. I will do theme : United. Let's see what that looks like. And now I have this cool maroon magenta color. And I saw, Daniel, that you were going to be going over CSS stuff later on, specifying like more of the appearance stuff. So I didn't go into it because CSS scares me, to be honest. But that is all I have for you all.